We are live. I am Danielle Craddock with the Doc Bookshop, co-owner of the Doc Bookshop. Again, we are on FIFA Wednesdays. We are back on it. And I am so excited. We've been snowed in Texas. It's been crazy. You know how the Texans get. We don't get that snow, but when it's an ice or a little bit of ice, we get crazy. We hunker down and everything just totally shut down. But we are here. We are back here. Get on our road to the World Cup. This is so important. This is a big year and it's already met with a bunch of challenges, but we're going to dive into it. We have a very, very special author with us today, and I am not going to delay anything because we only have an hour, and as you know, it's noontime in Texas, so some of you guys may be out to lunch. It is actually 7 p.m. in Spain, which is where our author of today is at. So again, you guys brace yourself, get some questions in, gather, share, bring your friends, bring everybody, because this is going to be a conversation for the books. We haven't had this across the country. Nobody has focused on the authors who write the stories about what we call the beautiful game. Thank you. Welcome, welcome, Miguel. Welcome to our show today. Um, I told him at the beginning of the series, you all, we said Danya is probably going to massacre some words, and I'm just telling you guys in advance. I have a lot of electrification with the tongue, but this is such an important international series. We are becoming worldwide. So I told him I'm going to go after this name, Miguel Lourenço Pereira. So I'm just going to say Miguel throughout the course of this conversation. He is a Portuguese journalist and a football historian, so we got a lot to learn today, whose work explores the cultural heart of the game across Europe. He is the author of several critically appraised sporting books, including Bring Me That Horizon, A Journey to the Soul of Portuguese Football. Um, so many great books. It is on our website. He also has Anatomy of a Genius. His writing has been published in Portugal, Spain, and Brazil. Y'all know how I like that Brazilian type of flair. So, and the UK for more than a decade. And he has contributed to well-known football publications such as Panaka, Librero, and Football Magazine. And for this conversation, you guys, I will probably go back and forth between football and soccer. We call it soccer here, but guess what? The rest of the world will probably say football. Um, Past his latest work, oh my God, that's what I reached out to him about his latest work. Passion continues his immersive approach to football culture by journeying through the rich, diverse world of Spanish football and the communities that live in it. Welcome to the Doc Bookshop Live, one of the largest African American owned bookstores or independent owned bookstores in Texas and across this nation. So I am so happy to have this international conversation. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
No, thank you for having me. I'm absolutely honored to be here with you talking about the beautiful game, as you mentioned. And I'll also say that probably I will say a lot more football than soccer. And I will not be talking about the Super Bowl when I mention football. It's just the way we talk about the game. Probably, I think only the United States, Canada, and Australia say soccer. The rest of the world goes with football. So I'm sorry for
No,
our
I thought
listeners if they get
South
some.
Africa calls it soccer, doesn't it? South
And
Africa?
South Africa too. Yeah, yeah. We have 4 or 5 countries in the world that say soccer, so at least there's a good average there. But the rest of us just say football or the national version of football. Indeed, my mother told me that when I was a kid, the third word I spoke first after saying mom and dad was ball, and the fourth was football. So I've been in love with the game since I was crawling, and it's something that it's in me. And over the past, I would say, more than 10 years, I've been writing about the game, as you mentioned, in different languages for different purposes, but also with the same goal that was to share stories with people from different realities, different cultures, different environments, and share that passion of the game that I have and I've been feeding since I was a kid.
Great. My nephew, I've gotten into soccer a couple of years, just a couple of years. Actually, Miguel, I used to coach soccer. that was that was the craziest. It was it was for the YMCA. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the YMCA in the United
Yeah.
States. And so it was a neighborhood team. My son played soccer up until a certain grade, and then probably up until like the I don't know fourth or fifth grade, and then it kind of went to basketball. but he was becoming a great soccer player. Um, Neighborhood kids and just kind of love. That was really a first intro to sports for a lot of children. I can't imagine why it's not just across the world, just popular in the United States, because most of them start off playing soccer. It's just a great neighborhood type of game that has emerged into this big event for the United States. But I want to say,
Well,
yeah,
I think it has something to do with the American mentality of fitting in, because in the 1920s, football or soccer, as you call it, was extremely popular in the United States. There were a lot of teams in communities from people that were immigrants, and I have a lot of family that moved from Portugal to the United States because they were so poor that they didn't have anything to eat, so they went to live in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and there was a lot of communities of Portuguese, Irish, Scottish, and they brought with them the passion for the game. So there was a very powerful football league in the United States in the 1920s. But then the crash of 29 happened, and all the football clubs just lost relevance, and people, especially people came from abroad, wanted to fit in within the American society, within the American community, and they moved to baseball, and then they moved to football, to what we call American football, because it was a better way to fit in, and that's why soccer lost a lot of the popularity it had. But if the crash wouldn't happen, and the United States finished third in the semifinals of the first World Cup in 1930, so they were
mhm.
better than any other European country in that tournament because the final was between Argentina and Uruguay from South America, and the United States just went brilliant in that tournament. In 1950, they were brilliant again. So there was a good sporting culture regarding football in the U.S. until the 50s, and then it simply disappeared, and it's kind of resurfing now over the past 20, 25 years, I would say. And it's very good for everyone because the Americans are so good at sports, whatever the sport, and it's good for everyone that they are involved and trying to embrace that passion that the game has and share it with the rest of the world.
I know my nephew. He's a soccer player now, so deeply. So I've just been kind of immersed into the sport of soccer, and we got a community event with soccer. We're giving out soccer balls. I say soccer. I'm going to change my language for this conversation to football because it's only four of us out of 48 teams that are in the FIFA World Cup that are saying the word soccer. So I am going to you guys. I am going to say football. So just know that, and I'm going to be respectful to the other nations in the world. So football, my nephew was playing football, and I wanted to have some pictures here, but they're on my other computer. So, but it's some great dynamic pictures of him doing all his different strikers. He's supposed to chime in today, so his team is actually supposed to chime in today. But yeah, so in the news for FIFA for the World Cup, what has resonated with you personally of what's going on in the news for FIFA World Cup?
Well, it's a strange sensation because when I was a kid, back in the day, football was not as televised as it is today. I'm 41, so I grew up in the 80s and the early 90s. And in those days, there was much less football televised, and the World Cup was the only event, much like the Olympics, that you get to see every 4 years and to enjoy the best in the world. You didn't have any other chance. There was no internet. There was no digital television. So the World Cup is very important for my generation, and it sort of created a sensation of anxiety when the new tournament was about to kickstart because everyone wanted to see people from different countries, different cultures, and we embraced that. And with time, that feeling kind of got lost because now we are invaded by football 24/7. All days of the year, there's a football match placing around, a lot of tournaments. But the World Cup still is very important emotionally to me and to people like me. And to see all the news that talk about a possible boycott of some nations regarding what's happened in the America, or all the craziness regarding this edition with the number of teams that were added, and that creates two different positions, particularly within Europe. There are some people who are against it because they believe it devalues the World Cup in a sense that a lot of more nations come in, so the quality of the matches gets worse. But at the same time, for people like me who believe that the World Cup is a celebration of your culture, a celebration of your nationality, but also a celebration of mixing with people from everywhere around the world. It's very beautiful to see people from nations who didn't have the opportunity to go to a World Cup before to go this time and to be part of it. So those nations really deserve to enjoy that moment. and to live the World Cup in peace and to live the World Cup with excitement. And all the news regarding what's happening kind of makes people doubt if they are traveling or not, makes people doubt if the atmosphere around the cities or the stadiums that will host the matches will be as exciting as it usually is within the World Cups. So strange days we are living now. I really think that the situation will improve come June, and that we will enjoy a good tournament, but there will be some tension before.
Um, for those of you just now tuning in, we are talking with Miguel about his book, The Passing On. We are kicking off the conversation with news that's going on in the FIFA World Cup today and some of the challenges. As you know, FIFA World Cup was started in 1930s, and he did a brief background on the FIFA World Cup starting in the 1930s. And now he talked about teams, now he has moved from 32 teams to 48 teams. And so there's some successes and challenges with that. I think it's beautiful that they brought more teams into the fold, more teams to get opportunities, more teams to get exposure. But you're talking about 48 teams, but how many teams are there in the nation? So I thought it was a great move. It's a very competitive move. Speaking of competition, last week we were just immersed in everything that was going on with Morocco and Senegal, and it kind of set me back. It's like here comes this here comes this age old, I guess, rivalry type. And I remember talking to an author. He wrote the book Crash, Jay Mamba, and it was that same thing with. It was in 1994 when the Zambia team, um,
Yeah.
they lost their whole team, and it was. I think they were flying over Morocco or Morocco. They were competing against Morocco, and they couldn't compete because they lost their whole team. And it's just like at the center of everything when there's issue, it's like Morocco is at the center of everything. Is it just poor fans, or is it just international rivalry, or you know they racialize it at the same time. So what is your take on the AFCON um, victory last week for the Senegalese?
And Morocco will co-host the next World Cup as well. So in
Oh, they got a lot
2030,
of
the
nerves.
tournament will be in Morocco and Portugal and in Spain, the three. So it will be very interesting after what we saw in the final. I think it was a lack of fair play, a lack of sportsmanship from everyone surrounding Morocco. The ball boys were trying to take the towel out of Senegal goalkeeper, trying to perturb him, even players. Um, Morocco is a nation that has invested much in football. They want to become the first African nation to play a World Cup semi-final. They hope by 2030 they'll be the first African nation to play a World Cup final when they host it. So they are investing a lot of money. And when a nation which is ruled by a king which is not democratically elected, so it's not probably not the most democratic of the nations within Africa, invest so much money they want return and they want it fast. So they just look at every single option they have to bring success. And I think that's what happened in the AFCON. Morocco played okay, but they didn't made a spectacular match within the whole of the tournament. They were very helped sometimes by some questionable referee decisions along the tournament, not only in the final but also in the semi-finals and in the last eight as well. And I think Senegal really deserved the win. It was a win that showed their strength, their character when they simply left the pitch. It was a token of charisma, of attitude, and at the same time, the ability to survive that penalty and to come back and win the game. It's the sense that shows that football can take the best out of you as a sportsman and as a human being. And that's what they did. And I was very pleased that they won. And I really hope they do a very good World Cup. But still, I do think that Morocco in the World Cup that we'll see in June will be among the favorites to reach at least the last eight, like they did in Qatar 4 years ago. And they are really aiming for that semi-final spot.
At one particular time in the play in the match, um, the Senegalese walked the team off the field. What was the background of that? What culminated into him making that decision? Because they were resting on that really caused a lot of the problems within the match for him to be walking, taking his team off the field.
Yeah, because usually in sport, there's a kind of unwritten law that says that even if you feel you are being robbed, even if you feel that you're being unfairly treated, you never left the pitch, never in any circumstances. So it is a demonstration of being absolutely fed up with the situation. And it had never happened at any final, at every tournament at AFCON or with Copa America or with the Euros in Europe or with the Asian Nations tournament, and more so with the World Cup. Nobody ever had taken a team off the pitch in those situations. That thing happens when you play in the neighborhood with your friends. That thing happens in the lower leagues of some countries, but not an event that was being watched by millions around the world. So I think they did that because they wanted to make a point. They wanted to show that they were feeling disrespected. They wanted to show that they were feeling that everything is going to be Morocco's way, and that the tournament itself was built around the idea of consecrating Morocco as the greatest African nation playing football, and they simply wouldn't take it. And I think that was what was behind the idea. But at the same time, they knew that if they had eventually leave the pitch, they will probably be suspended as a nation to play in the further competitions that they have over the next few years because FIFA has the power to do so. So in the end, they simply came back. They were lucky with the penalty. Luck strikes the brave, I would say. And then they showed the character to win the game in extra time.
I think that game was a very exciting and dynamic game, especially when you get somebody like me who cannot watch soccer football all the time. And I had some sentiments as I go through the series. Is mainly about bringing people back into the sport. Like you said, people left the sport. Um, from its onset and from its popularity into the United States, they left the sport, and so it's now recalibrating a community and a people. And one of the major comments, you won't believe, one of the major comments that, you know, quote unquote American football and people that are in basketball, and I find excitement in football. um, but they said that the scoring is so low and it takes so long. That's their biggest. I mean, across the board, the biggest complaint is the scoring. Like you can play for hours and nobody scored a point, and so it makes it hard to get them to embrace. And that's really across the board. I've talked to so many different coaches, so many people around the community said, "Hey, we have to get prepared for the World Cup. We have to get our students prepared for the World Cup, where the children are really understanding and loving football. The adults are like, I can't watch it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I'll wait till the final competition and I'll come." What do you say to those people?
Well, it's true that the United States looks at sport as a show, essentially. They feel they have to be entertained. So if you want to be entertained, of course you want high scores. You enjoy those 120, 110 NBA matches. You enjoy those football American matches with a lot of points, and it's understandable. But football in Europe, probably in South America and Africa, is not about the show. It's about belonging. It's about the connection. So they don't care if it is a low scoring sport because they treat every single goal like it is the end of the world. So if you are enjoying a high scoring sport and your team is just grabbing points after points and you're making dribbles and you're just making so much points, the value of the point itself loses relevance within you emotionally because you're so used to it that they are there that you just don't figure it out. When you see a football match, a soccer match, and it's all about tension, it's all about 11 versus 11 fighting for a single ball, just trying to get that chance, and there's only one goal, and that goal decides the winner. That goal enters posterity. So sometimes people say, okay, I've watched brilliant NBA matches over the years, but I cannot remember a single point, a single shot taken uh, to identify a single match. But with football, with soccer, you can recall a match by the goals that were scored because there were so few. So you got Maradona's famous goals in '86 against England with his hands, and then the goal that it just sprints all over the pitch because there were just two. If that match would end at 10-9, probably those two goals would lose relevance within the total of goals. And but I think it's a question of how people live sport. So for young kids that are starting within the game, like you mentioned, they are creating a sense of belonging with the community, with their friends, with their idea that playing the game is not just about winning or losing, but to compete and to enjoy themselves. And they understand that while playing the game, the true value of football, of soccer, is within it. within the 90 minutes that you enjoy playing the game, not about how many goals you score or if you win or if you lose. Whether people who just watch the sport from the sofa or in the bar, they just want to be feeling entertained by what's happening on the television set. So they just want to see a lot of action, a lot of things happen. And there are some high scoring football matches. There have been. The last World Cup final ended up 3-3, and it was exciting until the very last minute and was decided on a penalty shootout. Of course, the World Cup final played in the US in 1994 was a very dull match that ended nil-nil, and it had to be decided on penalties as well. So there are room for both. But I think the greatest difference is Americans or people who don't like soccer usually see as lack of entertainment, while people who do like football or soccer see it as a part of belonging to something bigger.
I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about the World Cup, and then we're going to jump into your book. When I said talk about a little bit about the World Cup, I want to talk a little bit about general predictions of the World Cup. I want to talk about as we look at America. America has this big fascination with Messi, so I'm going to go a little bit about the Messi effect. But before I jump into that, I want to say, the World Cup, as we look ahead to the next FIFA World Cup, what trends do you think will shape the tournament? What do you think will shape the tournament? How do you think this tournament is going to look?
The main thing that will shape the tournament will be weather. It happened last year when the football clubs went to the United States to play the FIFA Club World Cup. There were a lot of matches that players were complaining from the weather, from the storms that forced the matches to be halted, something that never happened in Europe or in South America. So I think weather will be determined because players will come to the World Cup after spending 10 months of playing almost twice a week. And football is a game where you don't get permanently subbed like you do with basketball, for instance. So if you play 90 minutes, you have to play the 90 minutes, and if you have to play 180 minutes, you have to play 180 minutes in the same week. And players don't rotate as much as they do in other sports because they are so important that managers want to have them pick them up in every single match. So when they get to the final of the season, they are worn out. They are very tired. All the players complain of the amount of games they have to play before they get to the time when they play the World Cup or the Euros or the Copa America that are usually played in the summer. So those players, if they are so tired and then they go and see that they have to go and play matches at the scheduling time to adjust so that Europeans could see the matches at a determined hour, and they have to play noon or they have to play 2 p.m. and with the raising hot sun both in Mexico, in Texas, in California, in Florida, with all the humidity as well, that will pay a price. That it will be a tool on some players, probably on the most decisive players. So managers will have to be very careful with the sides they pick up for all the matches they have to play. Players will be very careful not to get injured in the first matches, not to lose the rest of the tournament. So I think that will be a very important element to see whether a team will fare or not. And teams that are more ready to adapt to those kinds of weather, probably teams from South America, even teams from Africa or some areas from Asia, or the teams from Europe that will play mostly in Canada and in the northern part of America where the weather is not as demanding as it is in the south, those teams will probably fare better.
So basically, every team that's playing in Africa, I mean in Texas, they're going to do very well because Texas has the best weather across the world. Texas is the best, and we are near the epicenter. I know and I even got my Texas. I didn't tell you that at the top of the call, but I have my Texas logo shirt on, so
Mhm.
so I'm excited about that. And it has, if you see the little shape of Texas, you're going to learn that Texas are very, even though we're in the United States, we're a very proud people. We're
Oh yeah.
proud of what we can think, what we can bring. We're proud of the energy and just the excitement around the World Cup. So we're excited. Excuse me, excited. Um, I just got this question in from my nephew, who I told you was a soccer player, football player in Fort Worth, and he said, "What style of play do you expect to dominate the next World Cup, and why?"
What
So that's a
style of
little
play?
question, Gregory.
I think the next World Cup will be Spain's tournament. I think there's a lot of an electric style of play that Spain has with very young, talented kids that really love the game and have great technique, great individual ability, but also know how to work as a team when they are not a lot of egos. They are very friendly with one another, and that's very important when you go to spend a month without your families. Because players going to the World Cup, they are going to be the teams at least that go to the final or the semifinals. They will be more than a month away from their families, from their kids, from their wives, from their parents, from their friends. So environment, atmosphere within the camps, it's fundamental if you want to win something. And if you have a side like Spain has with a lot of kids that are very friendly with one another, have a good spirit, they are young, they are talented, they are physical. I think they have a good shot of winning the World Cup, and it will define the World Cup the way they are as a team, the way they play, the electric way they play. They usually play on what is called a 4-2-3-1 with two wingers wide open, a striker that usually helps a lot with the creation of play. And that style of play earned Spain a win in the last Euros, and I think it will be very helpful for them to win the World Cup again after they have won it in South Africa in 2010.
Okay, great. We didn't talk a lot about Spanish football, and I am going to jump in there when we talk a little bit more about your book. And I appreciate you just kind of answering some general questions. What are your predictions in the final matches? Who do you think is going to be the teams that are in the final matches?
Well, it always depends on the draws, because depending on where teams finish in the group stage, the knockouts take them to different directions, different rivals, so it's always very hypothetical. But I think Spain will be in the final, and against, I would say, Argentina. Argentina were world champions. They are still very good at it. They still have Messi, and Messi is the best player in the world still. So you know that people will really enjoy a Spain versus Argentina final.
And who does Messi play for in Florida?
Well,
Yeah,
I've heard it's been Miami for the past 2 years.
yeah, that is the Messi effect. He has love across the United States, and to see him going to Argentina, I thought they said that he might be injured, or he was dealing with some injury issues um, during the finals in the United States, but I'm not sure how that fared out. But it's
Well, it's 5 months still to the tournament, so I think he will recover, and it will be his last. It will be his last. So he'll do everything in his power just to be there. And he already won the tournament 4 years ago. So he took that from his shoulder because he spent most of his career being compared with Maradona, and everyone said, okay, you're very good, but Maradona has won a World Cup and you haven't. Now he has. So after that, I think he's more relaxed to it, but I think he will enjoy what will be his last World Cup. The same as Cristiano Ronaldo, it will be his last World Cup. And they have been dominating the game for the past
mhm.
20 years, the two of them. So it's an incredible story. There will be a Hollywood film about them in a couple of years because it was so different of the history of sports, probably the biggest rivalry ever in the history of sports, and football never saw anything like it, and will probably never will again.
I really like the Muwapi too. Muwapi, I think I'm probably massacring his name too. I really like his style of play too, but he doesn't get that. I don't think he gets that many accolades because he is a very
Mm.
talented player as well.
He is brilliant, and he already won a World Cup in 2018. He played the final in 2022 and scored 3 goals in the final. You're not a bad player if you score 3 goals in a World Cup final. I'll tell you that. But I think the problem with Mbappe and probably all the other players of his generation is that people are still in awe of Messi and Ronaldo. So everyone is compared with Messi and Ronaldo, and everyone will lose the comparison. So I think it will be a shame for his generation of players because they will still be in his shadow and probably will have to wait 4 or 5 years when Messi and Ronaldo are done with, and people will start to look at players with different eyes. But right now, everyone that has seen football has seen Messi or Ronaldo play at his best. So they will always be comparing to them, and it's a tough heritage to have on your shoulders.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's jump into your book because we're getting to our halfway mark, and I do want to talk about your book that was actually published in last year, Passion: A Journey to the Soul of Spanish Football. Passion journeys into the heart and soul of Spanish football, examining the rich diversity of the country's footballing culture and how the game unites the nation. Follow up to Pereira's widely acclaimed study of Portuguese football. Bring me that horizon. If you love that, you'll love this. So I am just excited to just jump into your book, Pascal. I don't you guys. I have the books in the store. I am not at the store, so I do not have a cover on the book. But you're welcome to go to our website and in a lot of our promotional campaign to see the cover of the book. It is a very dynamic cover. It has some of your top players on that cover. So I'm just honored to be on the call with somebody that has took a great time and great length to study the world of soccer football at its core. And so while we jump into your question, I want to go ahead and ask you, what made you write this book?
Well, I'm a storyteller, and this book is also part of a story of my life. I was born in Portugal, as you mentioned at first, so I'm Portuguese by birth, and I lived in Portugal until I was 22. And when I was 22, I moved to Spain, and I've been living in Spain over the past 19 years. So Spain kind of become my second nation, my adopted nation. And my first book in English, I already had published books in Portuguese, both in Portugal and in Brazil, and also in Spanish. And when I started to write in English, my first book was about Portuguese football. As you mentioned, Bring Me the Horizon, which is the only book in the world that is written in English about Portuguese football. And when I finished the book was a very emotional journey to me to be able to tell the story of my home nation to the rest of the world. That I felt I was indebted to do the same with Spanish football because there are not a lot of books about Spanish football outside of Spain. There are books about Real Madrid, Barcelona, but not exactly about Spanish football as a whole. So I took the decision to just travel around Spain to talk with people from different regions of Spain. Spain is a huge country. It's smaller than Texas, but it's a huge in European patterns. And Europe countries are smaller than American states. But Spain is a very different country. You have deserts, you have rainy shores, you have mountains, you have beautiful beaches that look like the Caribbean. So they have islands. So it's a strange country because it's very complex, very different. There are different languages within the country, different types of nationalities that live under the same state. So there's a lot of good stories to tell, and people weren't telling them, at least outside Spain. So I decided I would be one of the few people that would pick them up, talk with some protagonists, players, managers, journalists, historians, supporters, people who have lived and enjoyed the game for so long, and then just pick it up all together and try to tell a story that was like a road trip. Essentially, the book is a road trip when you start in Galicia, which is in the northwestern part of Spain. You end on the other side, and it's just me traveling around, talking about what I see. And it also talks more than football because for me, football is not just a game. Football for me explains, or at least helps explain, what a country is. Football is a reflection of the society of each country. The way football is lived, the way it is played, it is also a reflection of a culture, of a society. So the book talks a lot about music, about cinema, about gastronomy, about tourist sites, because there's no way people just love the football for the 90 minutes. And that's what I was telling before when I talk about belonging, the difference between sports in the American mindset and the European or South American, African mindset. When you talk about football, you talk about belonging with your community, with your neighborhood, with your family, but you also talk about the representation of your region, of your city, the idea that a football club is more than just a football club. It represents a color that represents your region. Supporters get together on weekdays just to talk about the game, and then they go on the weekends to enjoy it. And they travel away to see their team play other sides. A lot of rivalries, local rivalries, regional rivalries, national rivalries, continental rivalries. So it's much more complex than just 22 men kicking a ball for 90 minutes. And that was the idea behind this book and all the other books I've written so far.
Oh my God, you have provided the best summary to just tell the love of football beyond the 22 players on the field. I truly, truly appreciate that. I think that is just, in this series, that's what I've been hearing. That's what I've been understanding. Like you can get caught up in the semantics of the sport, but it's very deeper than that, and you brought in so much depth. But I want to Bring just drill down, go into a micro. What does this game? You talk about the geography, but what does this game reveal about Spain that history books often miss? So, what is the history that is tied into the sport in Spain, just to bring us closer into the team that you said is going to be in the finals?
Yeah, so the idea of Spain is a very different countries within the same country. So they are very different within themselves, but at the same time they are one. And football expresses those differences and also what gets them together. So Spanish people are really connected by few things. They love living in the outdoors, they love speak loudly, they love beer, they love wine, and they love football. But then depending on the region you are, they see football differently. They play it differently. The supporters expect things differently. So when I was mentioned also before the differences in United States and Canada, you have franchises, so teams can move from city to city depending on what the owner wants to. And in Europe, clubs are born within the neighborhood, so people are supporting the club from the place they were born. So my father was from a club, my grandfather was from a club, and you ended up being from the same club because it's like an heritage. And in different parts of Spain, people feel that belonging very strongly. And geography, the weather also defines what kind of football they play. So if they are from the northern side of Spain, where it rains a lot of storms, muddy pitches, so they prefer a more physical game. But if they are from the southern part of Spain, which is much more like Texas or Florida, so they prefer a more slow, entertaining game, a little bit like the bullfighters. They want more of show in the game than just going competing from the ball. And if they are from cities like Barcelona, for instance, when they have a lot of cultural heritage, they also expect their team to perform differently. So every single region has a style of play which is unique to them. But at the same time, when they get together and they play with the national side, they have a shared style of play among them. So it's a game that allows you to see what gets them together and also what sets them apart.
Great, 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 great. Um, you also write about your cities and regions on World Cup and the live, and I like how you bring those cities together. What cities resonate with you that really embody the sport? Like you mentioned Barcelona, you mentioned Madrid. Is that the cities that should resonate with people outside of Spain?
Well, they are the most famous because they host the most famous clubs in Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, Madrid, Barcelona, and Espanyol in Barcelona. But I think the city that best represents what football is all about in Spain actually is Seville. So Seville is a city in the south. So it's a city where in the summer you usually get 40 degrees Celsius during 3 or 4 months, so it's super hot, and it practically never rains even during the winter time. So it's a city full of passion. People are very passionate about everything they do, and they have the biggest rivalry in Spain because the city is divided with two clubs, but it's equally divided. There are some cities in Spain where there are two clubs, but there's always one bigger than the other. Not in Seville. They are 50-50. And the derbies between those teams, which are Betis and Sevilla, are absolutely crazy. I went to Seville. I traveled there. I spoke with people. I enjoyed watching football there. And it's completely different to what happens when I travel to Madrid or Barcelona or even the northern cities of Bilbao, which are very passionate about the game. But I think no place is as passionate about Seville. So much so that the national side of Spain, despite Madrid being the capital, prefers to play in Seville than to play in Madrid because they know people will support him with more passion in Seville. Whether if they play in Madrid, they will be more judged and people will be more demanding of results. Well, in Seville, they will just simply get their backs and will be shouting for them for 90 minutes, supporting them no matter what. So it's a very passionate city, a very different city towards the rest of all Spain.
With the passion, okay, I'm happy we're talking about Real Madrid and Barcelona, and you were right, they're actually known worldwide. What does the book reveal about them that casual fans may not realize? Just casual fans may not realize. I think you touched on that a little bit, but I really want to go because that's what we hear. That's what we know. We don't know. anything else, but we know just Real Madrid and Barcelona.
Yeah.
And so to go deeper and beyond that, I think your Passion brings a more into the scope of the conversation.
Yeah. So actually, my next book in English will be about Real Madrid. It will be out in next May, and I think it's a club everyone knows in the world because they are the serial winners of the sport. They are the New York Giants. They are a side that everyone knows. If you're going to Australia, if you're going to the United States, to Chile or to Russia, if you say Real Madrid, people know what you're talking about because nobody has won more at football than they have. Not in Spain, not in Europe, not in the world. So they are known as serial winners. But actually, Real Madrid is a very curious club because they now represent an idea of Spain as a country. And 60 years ago, they were a very different club because they weren't winners. They weren't winning anything, and people didn't respect them as much as they do today. So it's a story that tells you that sometimes people really crave for success, and they crave to be connected with sides that win. And that's one of the important things of football. You have teams that 100 years ago, 50 years ago, were seen as successful, and they had a lot of supporters then, but the game wasn't globalized yet. So the supporters was just in their city or at least in their country. There was no way that a team in the 1950s or 40s got supporters in Australia or in the United States or in South Africa because they couldn't see them play. They didn't know who they were. And now we're living in a globalized world. So actually, over the past 25 years, the two sides that won the most were Barcelona and Real Madrid. Barcelona with Messi, Real Madrid with Cristiano Ronaldo. So now people around the world are tuning in to see those matches, are connecting with them more because they can see them, they can understand them. If the globalization that we are living over the past 20, 25 years had started 50 years ago, they would probably connect with other clubs as much as they are connecting now. So, in a sense, they are reflecting the world we live in, a world where we are very close of each other. Here I am talking with you, Spain, and the America, Texas, and Madrid, because we can connect. But 50 years ago, this conversation probably wouldn't be possible. I wouldn't know that there is a dog bookshop, and you probably wouldn't know there was a book written about Miguel Pereira. So I think Barcelona and Real Madrid represent that trend very good. And if, for instance, now over the past 25 years, Barcelona wasn't winning anything, and Atletico Madrid or Valencia or other Spanish club was winning as much, people would know about them more than they do. It's just a question that they started winning at the right time.
I mean, this conversation is exciting and dynamic. I mean, I could just sit and listen to you talk all day. I really can. But I do want to ask a question because we talk about players and on in the course of this series, I've talked about a lot of players. But I want to talk about some of your winning managers. That I think your book dives into the winning managers. It goes not only to the sport but the managing and the leadership team. Can you dive into that or give us a more inside look into what Passion reveals about the winning managers?
Yeah, nowadays, right now, there's probably no country exporting managers so successfully as Spain. You have Pep Guardiola at Manchester City. You have Mikel Arteta at Arsenal. You have Unai Emery at Aston Villa playing the Premier League, winning trophies, playing for the title. You have Luis Enrique with PSG that just won the Champions League last year. So there are so many good Spanish managers right now. And there is a reason for it. And the reason is Spain was a poor country. Spain was a very poor country until the 1980s. So, when you are a poor country, you don't have money to buy players. You have to create your own players from scratch. So, you cannot invest as much money as the rich countries can. So, managers have to find ways to be competitive with lesser means. So, over the 1980s, 1990s, Spanish managers started to find a way to be competitive, and they did it through tactics. So Spanish football became much more tactical than it was before. There was the help of a Dutch manager called Johan Cruyff. It was one of the best players in the game in the 70s, and then he was turned manager of Barcelona in the 90s, and he helped give them inspiration and bring him ideas from Northern football. But what is actually happened was that Spanish managers understood that, okay, I cannot buy the best players in the world. I'm not Italy. I'm not Germany. I'm not the UK. So I need to have my players, who are nobody, play as good as them. If they can play as good as them because they are not as strong, they're not as fast, They're not as technical. They have not the same technical ability that they have. I have to create a team spirit. I have to create a tactical blueprint that, if they follow it, we will succeed. And that's what they did. They started to play same way tactically, passing the ball a lot, not running after the ball, not throwing the ball away, just touching the ball between them. And they created very good dynamics. And that created a school of managers that just popped up over the last 20 years and has been extremely successful. That's why Spain only started to win at the international stage since 2008. Before 2008, Spain haven't won anything for about 50 years. They were considered the underdogs of European football, and they always disappointed. People expected great things of them, and they never delivered because they hadn't found yet their soul. They didn't have found yet the common language that unites players and managers. When they did, they started to win the Euros. They started to win the World Cup. Real Madrid and Barcelona starting to win the Champions Leagues because they just were motivated by those managers who just found a way to become bigger than the money that was being spent by other nations who didn't need to have as good as managers as they were because they could buy the best players.
Wow. Again, that was a very dynamic response, and I truly appreciate you just diving into the winning manager because oftentimes we don't see it, and as you explained, the export of this talent across the world. So we truly appreciate that, and I do want to really dive into because your book also talks about the political and social struggles within football in Spain. So, can you expound on that as we connect more to Spain, love of the soccer and the sport, and how it impacts their environment?
So soccer in Spain lived through three different periods of the history of the country. That's why I think it explains so well what the country is. When people started to play football or soccer in Spain, Spain was still a monarchy, an old school monarchy. So football was a thing of the rich, essentially. Poor people didn't play football. They didn't have the time. They were working on the field. They were working on factories. They couldn't play the game. So the game was being played by the sons of the rich guys who own the lands where the poor people work or who own the factories where the poor people work. So that slowly changed at a time when the working class started to gain more predominance in the 1920s. So the game becomes diverse. They have those typical more upper class football clubs, but they also have the working class football clubs. And it was a much more rich experience. What happens then is that Spain had a very, very cruel civil war between 1936 and 1939. It was the war that preceded World War II. It was very violent. It was the fascist army against the left wing resistance that they were in power at the time they had been elected in the Republic, the short lived Republic of Spain, and the fascist army won. And they imposed martial law, they imposed a lot of measures that turned Spain in a dictatorship. And that dictatorship lasted 40 years under the rule of the same guy called Francisco Franco, which was a general from the Spanish army. And he was very friendly with Hitler. He was very friendly with Mussolini, the fascist leaders of Germany and Italy. So he was made of the same mold, and he changed the way football was played and talked about in Spain because there was censorship, so people couldn't protest, people couldn't say anything in the news. So football had been influenced by the British, and he changed the names of teams to sound more Spanish. There was no match reports that said if the referee has done something good or bad because the authority could not be questioned. They were untouchable. And he liked teams that played rough. He liked teams that were violent, the same as he was. So Spain for 40 years was a very violent place to be if you were a football player. But then when he died in 1978, Spain reversed to what we know them today, a more democratic regime. It's still a monarchy, but it has elections, so people can vote from the prime minister, and they are part of that society. And football evolved with that. So one of the good things with the new democratic regime happened was that people from different regions that were being persecuted by regime because they were different, because they had different values, they were more left wing or they were more nationalist, they started to express themselves through football. Football was a way of them to feel good with themselves, and that created different cool styles of play, and that created different type of players. that created different trends since the 1980s until right now. So Spain has been evolving as a country and as a society also through the way they are being playing and watching football.
What that was just an excellent high level overview of how you connect history, politics, and the struggle, and how it relates to this beautiful game. And I think anybody can pick up your book just wanting to know the history of Spain. They can find that within Passion, as well as the love for the sport. What do you hope readers take away from Passion when they finish the last page?
Well, the first thing I like to do is because I am one of those readers is when I finish a book who talks about the football of a nation is to check the next flight and to watch a match there. It's just the idea that I feel so connected with the stories that are told. And I've experienced that as a reader, reading books about, I don't know, football in Italy, in Germany, in Turkey, in Albania, in Brazil, in Mexico. And the first feeling that I have is I want to be there. I want to feel the same things that this author is making me feel through his words. So if I had to ask something after someone picks up the book and then reads it and thinks, okay, this is a country worth visiting. This is a football match worth watching. I know, of course, it's not the same if you're in Europe and just moving through European countries and cross the Atlantic. So I don't expect someone from Texas to just want to pop in an airplane to go to Spain to see a match, but at least to know a little bit more about. In the end, this is just an introduction because nations are so complex, stories are so complex that you cannot put them in one book. The books serve as an appetizer for you to want to know more. And that is Passion. And with every single other book that you read, it tells you a story and eventually it wants you to know more about the story behind the story. And probably that's what I will want readers to get in the end. I want to know more about Spain. I want to know more about Spanish football. I want to know more about Spanish music or about Spanish cinema because it's just something inside of me makes me want to be part of that cultural symbiosis that football provides also to people.
And it has done that for me. I even wanted to know more about Portugal and how Portugal and Spain, how that interaction works, the relationships, the challenges. And I think you covered that in your other book. And so we didn't have a chance to get into that other book. But I think your writing, your travel, your history, your journalism just bring those that are not fans even into the span of sports. And I think that's what your book does. Um, so, how do you think, beyond what I've shared, how do you think what readers that are not football fans can connect to this book? And I think you've explained in so many words that it's the history, it's the different geographical areas. Do you believe that at the same time? Is that how you connect people that are not football fans that can connect to this, the sport and the book?
Oh yeah, I think what is good about culture, and culture can be expressed in so many ways, and just writing a book is just one of them, is that it makes you feel stuff. Same with movies. The first book I wrote was about cinema. When I was a kid, I was 21. I loved cinema. And of course, I have seen more than 7,000 movies in my life. And most of them were American movies. So I never been into the US, but I know all about American culture. I know all about American sports through movies. So I've seen
Well, okay,
movies
okay,
about,
Miguel. Okay. Now, some of that stuff that they put out in the movies is not really
I
real
know,
when it comes to
I
men.
know, I know. But what I was saying is that if you see a movie about basketball,
Right.
that is not really about basketball. Probably is about a father and a son. Probably is about a community. Probably is about the sense of belonging. You also enjoy the basketball part of the movie. The same with football, with American football as well. The same with NASCAR or ice hockey or whatever. So the sport is just a pretext to be connected with something bigger. And I think it happens the same with football. So you don't need to really enjoy watching 90 minutes of a football match to enjoy a book about football because it will tell you more. This is not a book that says in the year 1964 a team won 2-1 and the goal scorers were X and X. No, this is a book that says there's a city in Galicia where a football club was founded and owned by a drug dealer who loves football so much he decided to start his own team, just go to play against Real Madrid. So that's a story. It has nothing to do about the football. It has to do about the local community, how drug was impactful in the 1980s to make people rich in that community, but also created so much pain within the families of people that suffer from it directly. So it tells the story about the economy of the region, but also the story about the ambition of one man. So those stories, football is just a pretext. It could be football, it could be Formula One, it could be basketball. Sport actually opens you a door that you just cross it and enter another dimension. And I think people who really are not still into football, they will be, but they are still not into football while reading books like Passion. They can get into football through other ways. And music is one of them. It's also in the book, cinema, the idea of tasting a dish typical from a region, and then because they just enjoy that dish, they start to get to know more about the region, and then eventually they get into the football part. So, in a sense, if you love the game, the names will be there, the stories will be there, the events that will be there. But if you don't love the game still, there are a lot of ingredients there that will probably will help you make the decision to become in love with the game later on.
Passion is a dynamic book, and it just that. I think whether you're a fan of the sport or whether you're trying to be a part of the sport, because FIFA World Cup is coming to the United States, and Dallas Fort Worth, the Doc Bookshop is near the epicenter. That means if we stop all this international problems, we will have a fun time hosting 9 matches in the Dallas Fort Worth area. And I just think this insight, this opportunity, reading Passion gives me more insight to the teams that are coming, the families that are coming, and the history and the political experience, the cultural experience that these nations have, that under that we understand now is just deeper in the sport. So when those players get on a team, I know what they're bringing with them, and that is the families, that is the community, that is the economy that has shaped them to the players that they are. And I cannot let you get away without us talking. There's so much I wanted to talk to you about. I have a list of questions like your best moments, the best chapters. I don't know. I'm gonna have to write you or text you and say, okay, what did you mean by this? But I want to end by talking about the World Cup team members to watch by role and their impact. So I gotta say, since you said Spain is going to be in the finals, I want to know the players that we need to watch for.
Mhm.
I know Petrie, but
So number one player will be Lamine Yamal. So he is right now the most exciting player in the world. He
oh,
is just a
generational
kid.
talent, yeah.
He is just a kid, but he's so good at football. And he also has, one of the things that I meant before about belonging and the sense that football explains so many things. So Lamine, his father is African, so is not Spanish by genetics or by birth, is an immigrant that came to Spain and because living in Africa was so difficult for his parents. So he grew up in a very poor, difficult neighborhood in Barcelona. He lived in the street. So his story of success is also a story of integration, and that's very important because football helps people to belong, to integrate in societies and cities and nations. And I think he represents that so well, and he plays wonderful football. And then you have Pedri. Pedri is the brain of that side. He comes from the Canary Islands. So the Canary Islands are an archipelago in the Atlantic, so it's a very exotic place. And he is kind of the guy that makes everything tick within that side. Then you have Nico Williams. His parents also came from Africa. They came from West Africa. They crossed the Sahara Desert on foot. His mother was pregnant, and they were detained by the police in the border. Then they were later helped by a family to settle in, and he became such a talented winger playing for Athletic Bilbao, which is a club in the north of Spain, and he's very friend with Lamine, so there's a very good connection between the two of them, and they are so fast, so talented. They will be the guys that people will be looking for if they want spectacle. If they want more about control, about tactics, about how the game is played in the middle of the park, you have both Pedri. And you have Rodri. Rodri just won the Ballon d'Or, which is the award for best player in the world, just the season before. He has been injured for
Yeah.
he has been injured this season for quite a while, but I think he will be recovering on time to play the World Cup. And he is so good in a sense that when he gets the ball, nobody gets the ball from him. And he's also very able to put the right passes at the right time and has been decisive to elevate the game of the Spanish side. Then you have the right back is Daniel Carvajal, which is a veteran that played for Real Madrid for the last 13 years. So this will be his last tournament, but it still represents so much of what Spain is all about. The grit, the winning mentality they have been developing over the years. Is the team captain, and his values, the way he connects the different players from different regions, different generations, is so important for the team's success. And then you have a lot of players which are not as good as those, but really make this the spirit of the team, because Spain is not really about individuals. They do have very good individuals, like I mentioned, but it's more about the team ethos. So I would say it's one of the few teams that you have 20 players and they could all be playing in the first 11, and you wouldn't notice the difference. And there are probably teams where you have better players than the players that Spain have. But there will be three or four, and then you look to the other players and they are much worse. But in Spain, they are so good, and there are so many being so good that makes the side much more able to compete. And that's why I think they will be in the final, probably winning the tournament as well.
I want to thank you, Miguel. I don't think we got as far into all the research that you have done, and you mentioned players that come from different backgrounds, come from Africa, and we didn't talk about a lot of the players that are exported out of Africa and going into, especially in Portugal. I think Portugal had to stop. I think in your last book you talked about Portugal and getting their players from Congo, then not able to get their players from Congo. So I don't think I don't know how to. I don't know if I had to call you back. You know what, Miguel? I think I'm gonna do a roundhouse where I get everybody that we've interviewed on a call after I kind of mass produce our conversation in different segments so people can really digest all that you have shared, because you have shared some wonderful insight to one of the nations that will probably guaranteed be a part of the finalists. I'm sure of it. And even when I was at the draw, I didn't realize I did at this place called Don't Laugh. I did it at this place called Billy Bob's, and we had a draw. Yeah, Billy Bob our cowboy hat, so we were really cowboy. And I didn't realize how many Spanish people. I knew we had the Mexicans, of course, the Mexicans, but there is the Mexicans and there is the Spanish. There is a
Not the same.
different. Oh, I have learned the difference. I hosted a Spanish author that flew into the United States with the consulate at our store before. And I was like, oh, great, she's Spanish, and we're going to get all these groups together. We're going to get the Puerto Ricans and Mexicans. It's different. So I understood that. It did not take me by surprise. They were like really gung ho Spanish. They had the flag, they were wrapped in the flag. And I was like, wow, gosh, Texas, you could find yourself in this little bubble, but it's so big when you go to the draw. I had seen Italians, I see everybody. I was like in their own section, but still everybody had one focus. We're excited. We want to see this draw. And so I just think that your book, your story, your background, your knowledge has so much to offer that we didn't even really get into the technique and the style, the player on the field, the different positions on the field, and how they compete against one another, because this sport offers so much. And I think that's really going to bring those that are not fans today into the fans. If the doc can help contribute to that conversation through books, we are there for it. And I just want to appreciate any closing remarks from you.
Well, just first of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for helping grow the interest in the game in the US, and try to motivate people to connect with the game. And I only have to say, life is too short. People just need to enjoy it, and the World Cup is coming. People just need to be that month free of worries, free of negativity, just being able to thrive, to connect with the, like you mentioned, so many different people from different nations will be there. will have their own stories to tell. Countries that never been to a World Cup, countries that have been to all the World Cups. So there are so many rich stories that football has the power to unite people all around the world, and the World Cup is the party that you want to go to if you want to connect with those people. So I think it's very important to create that feeling of belonging to the idea of the World Cup, the feeling of belonging to the international community that loves the game. And I'm really honored just to be here and to be sharing some insights on the book with you and with the people that are watching us or will watch us in later on. And just I hope that the series keep on going. I will be watching from afar, and just thank you for having me.
Oh, I need to know are you going to be able to attend any matches in the between Canada, Mexico, and the United States?
No, I'm not traveling. I'll be staying here. I have work. I will be attending the matches just on television.
Okay, I guess I had to be boots on the ground and for you send you something. I will be in touch, and I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to get there, and I'm going to be in touch. I have my Spanish garb coming in because they have all the flags in a scarf. So it should have been in by the time of this interview. It's probably sitting on somebody's truck right now because I do everything at the last minute. I need to stop that. But you're going to see me in my Spanish regalia because I'm representing all the nations that are going to be a part of the World Cup that I have on the conversation on the call. So I think you're going to represent my Spanish and my Portugal flag that I'm going to have in the store, but I'll be over the course of the series and as I share different clips, I'm going to be sharing some of the garb we have from the different nations. And I thank you
Brilliant.
for your contribution. How can people reach out to you if they want to learn more or just tell you how much they love the book or the stories?
Well, I can be found on social media, of course. That's where we are all connected right now. So I'm on X. My handle is the real Miguel LP. I had one handle before that was stolen a few weeks ago by some hackers. So I just had to create a new one. That's why the name. And I'm also on Instagram, Miguel.lpa. So if people want to reach out just to share what they thought about the book, just to share what they would like to see that is not there. Because as a writer, for me, the most difficult thing is not what is in the book, but what you have to leave out of the book because there's no room to tell all the stories you want to tell. So some people read books and say, you didn't talk about this or you didn't talk about that. That doesn't mean I didn't want to, just that you have a limited space that you can put your words into it. And sometimes I really like to talk about the stories that are not in the book because when people get the book, they get the stories, but then they just go and ask things about it. And I really enjoy talking about things that didn't get into the book in the first place. So those conversations are always very enriching as well.
So you guys, you can we put the link in the chat. You can go to our page to get the book. It is under Pitch Publishing, and it is passing on. And I'll be talking about it for the rest of the series, you guys. So you'll have plenty of time to get the book. You'll the book is going to be in or is in store in our World Cup book display, so you can have that, and you can also enter a chance to win all the books that are a part of this series. We truly thank you, Miguel. Thank you for appearing on DocLive.tv. We look forward to hearing about all the great things you're doing. And your book is releasing this year in May or next year in May?
This year, next May, it's called
Okay,
The
so
Greatest about Real Madrid.
I'll have that book to post up under your page too. So I'll have that book too. So
Yeah,
again, thank you so much. We look forward to working
thank
with you
you.
in the future.